A lot of us use movies to help us make sense of the world. I often see people say that, it feels like we live in idiocracy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of America!
Others might say it feels like we're heading towards the world of WALL-E.
Over here.
And other days it feels like we're in the episode of Black Mirror where every social interaction basically gets Yelp reviewed.
You know our Prime Influencers program? Do I qualify for that? No, you don't. We'd need you around a 4 or 5.
But all of those are wrong because I think we're actually living in an animated classic from 2006, Cars. Now, you might remember the heartwarming film that taught us, the importance of choosing compassion over success, and that friendship is what makes life worthwhile.
I knew it. I knowed I made a good choice.
In what?
My best friend.
And then sometimes we just need to get outside and take a long drive with a friend.
Don't you big city race cars ever just take a drive?
No.
The movie offers us a vision of a kinder and slower future. Now, the cars in this movie are not wrong for trying to tell us that friendship and kindness are good and that money and fame are overrated, but behind that sentimental message, there might be something going on that's a little bit more sinister. While the cars in the film might be trying to teach us that community and compassion are the answer to all of our difficulties, what if the cars themselves are the problem and not the solution to some of what's going wrong with our society?
Look, and they're driving right by. They don't even know what they're missing.
And what if the film's internal contradictions can illuminate the issues with our own car-based culture and show us how a world built for automobiles is making all of us a little bit less human? Okay, just a quick refresher if you forgot the movie. It really gets cooking when Lightning McQueen, the main character, is on his way to compete for the Piston Cup, but then he falls out of the truck that he's in and lands in the sleepy town of Radiator Springs.
Morning, Sleeping Beauty!
And yeah, in case you missed that, cars sleep inside of other cars. I don't know, your mind could go some places with that. I don't encourage you to. Now, after busting up the town's main road, Lightning gets sentenced to indentured servitude and is forced to try a slower pace of life.
I shouldn't have to put up with this. I'm a precision instrument of speed and aerodynamics.
You hurt your what?
I'm a very famous race car.
Yeah, you thought the cars being inside of other cars thing was weird, but the cars also do indentured servitude to each other. And if you think I'm exaggerating at all, I looked up the definition of indentured servitude. I didn't want to be hyperbolic here, but it absolutely counts as indentured servitude. But it's cute because it's a car. His time amongst the townfolk teaches Lightning that people matter more than accolades, and that friendship might matter more than winning races and getting sponsors.
When is the last time you cared about something except yourself, Hot Rod?
Now, this all leads him to sacrifice Piston Cup glory to help an injured competitor cross the finish line, putting Radiator Springs back on the map in the process. But it's a bumpy road to get there. Now, initially, Lightning's classic sort of alpha personality clashes with his humble new surroundings.
I create feelings in others that they themselves don't understand.
And this does not help endear him to the cars of Radiator Springs.
Who do you think you are?
In our own world, we can often associate specific types of cars with certain types of people, right? Like if I see someone in a Cybertruck, I think, hey, there's a rich guy that wishes that Elon was their daddy. If someone drives a Prius, you probably care about the planet and listen to a lot of NPR. And in dads and Subarus, well, I just think, wow, that's a guy that I'd want to have a beer with. Now in the film, each car that we meet embodies one of these stereotypes.
Respect the classics, man. It's Hendrix.
Wreck? Shoot. I'm the world's best backwards driver.
Do you know many Ferraris?
And while these cliches themselves are nothing new, it helps to consider these depictions in the context of what philosopher Peter Sloterdijk dubs automobilization, or the merging of the human self with their car. As he sees it, modern society revolves around the necessity of movement, and that movement is what makes the human subject free. And because the automobile expands our ability to move, it becomes the technological double of the active subject. Now, he writes that I and the automobile belong together in a metaphysical way, like the body and soul of one and the same unit of motion. Shout out to anyone that saw the French movie Titan and just had a visual of that lady banging her car. It's not exactly what he's talking about here, but it's a helpful visual that we probably won't use because YouTube would say, Now, being in our cars endows us with a certain kind of freedom. And it lets us know that we're called to something more than a half-animal pedestrian life. Now, we see this personified, or I don't know, carsonified? No, that would be like turning into Johnny Carson. Which would be cool, but I heard he was kind of a dick. So we see this personified in the film, showing us cars that are each endowed with a specific type of human subjectivity. Now, while we're not yet merging with our vehicles, though I would bet my life that Elon Musk is actively working on that, we are living in a world that is constructed around the metaphysical principle that the automobile is essential for our personal and economic freedom. And the film exemplifies this sort of car-centric metaphysics via a world that is designed solely to accommodate cars. Actually, apparently a whole solar system.
I bet even the roads on the moon ain't this smooth.
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, that's kind of weird because cars have seats in them. They're designed for people to be in them. So why would they be there without us? If you're thinking that, I'm thinking that. There's only one answer, and it's not a pleasant one. It's that the cars did a genocide on all the humans. If you can think of another solution besides that, let me know in the comments. This accurately reflects our own non-animated reality. Now, the rise of mass-produced cars in the 1910s quickly led the industry to pursue cozy lobbying relationships with local and federal governments, pushing them to cede road space from pedestrians to cars. It even invented the term jaywalking to describe what was previously referred to as crossing the street. Now, the rise of suburban sprawl further centered city planning around driving, and today that looks like massive parking lots and zoning laws that keep housing and commercial spaces far apart, as well as wide, multi-lane roads and streets without sidewalks. Here in Los Angeles, 41% of the city is dedicated to roads or parking. You would think that would mean you could get places quickly or find a parking spot, but neither of those things is true. Cars literalizes this via a world where automobiles have replaced all sentient organic life. Everything's built to facilitate cars doing car stuff. You know, there's well-designed car hotel rooms and entire local economies based on car stuff.
I do have a map over at the Cozy Cone Motel. And if you do stay, we offer a free Lincoln Continental breakfast.
Now, in our world, designing cities for cars has had some consequences. Namely, it means that now owning a car is basically a necessity, unless you live in New York City, you have to own a car, maybe San Francisco, Washington, D.C., I don't know. Let me know what other cities you can actually survive in America without a car. Chicago. And if you needed the extra push, the auto industry also bought up lots of public transit and gutted its infrastructure.
Nobody's gonna drive this lousy freeway when they can take the red car for a nickel.
Well, they'll drive. They'll have to. You see, I bought the red car so I could dismantle it.
Now, aside from home and work, people rarely have to leave their cars, It's become an extension of our humanity, a mechanism for the expression of our most basic human freedom to move. And if you don't believe me, consider how having a car probably makes you feel more free than someone who has to stand around waiting for the bus. I mean, the first 4 or 5 years that I lived here in LA, I didn't have a car, and I really did think I was morally superior to everyone else because I took public transit and walked. But then I got one and became a bad person, and I felt so much more free. I felt like I could do stuff without checking bus and train schedules, could go where I wanted to go. I hate that I felt that, but I did feel it. And when we over-identify with our cars, we end up acting a lot like, Lightning McQueen, under-identifying with everyone else, especially those who are also concealed within cars. This isn't exactly conducive to sweeping displays of humanity, which we see in Lightning's absolute selfishness.
Just stopping off for a quick breather, kid. Old Mac needs a rest.
Absolutely not. We're driving straight through all night till we get to California. We agreed to it.
And this reflects what some theorists across the 20th century observed: the isolating and atomizing nature of car culture, which causes what Andre Gores calls aggressive and competitive selfishness. As Gores explains, mass motoring affects an absolute triumph of bourgeois ideology on the level of daily life. It gives and supports in everyone the illusion that each individual can seek his or her own benefit at the expense of everyone else. Merging with our cars isn't conducive to connecting with other humans.
They're giving you 20 tickets for the tiebreaker thing in Cali. I'll pass them on to your friends. You shoot me the names. You let Harv rock it for you, all right, baby?
Right. Friends. Yes, there's,
And this is not a problem exclusive to Pixar movies. I had a conversation with a friend recently about how we want to hang out more, but because we live about 45 minutes, depending on the day, apart from each other, sometimes it's easier to just stay home and honestly be kind of lonely than it is to drive and hang out with each other. You know, and that's a really bad situation to be in when you live in a city that both necessitates driving, but then that driving is what keeps you from having a thriving social life, you know, and that's even if you're lucky enough to own a car and be able-bodied enough to drive it. And Lightning embodies this alienating logic because what we might lose in easy access to friends and community, we then gain in access to speed and efficiency. Now, our buddy Lightning, you know, we might not have friends to invite to the big race, but hey, at least he's so fast he gets to go to the big race.
Speed. I am speed.
Now, philosopher Paul Virilio writes about how this type of obsession with moving fast is key to understanding the modern world, arguing that speed, rather than class or wealth, is the primary force shaping civilization. In the context of capitalism, speed means the constant acceleration and movement of goods and bodies. The modern preoccupation with speed is most obvious in spaces like the military. You know, we have big scary missiles and they can just get launched at a moment's notice and travel around the world. Or, you know, we have information technology, which means I can send memes to my friend Dave in Philly in the blink of an eye. They're probably weird memes because he's a weird guy. But this also manifests all across society. You know, think about fast food, fast fashion, and even cars that get faster even as the speed limit stays the same. In modern society, Virilio says to succeed is to reach the power of greater speed.
I've been dreaming about it my whole life. I'll be the first rookie in history ever to win it. And when I do, we're talking big new sponsor with private helicopters.
Now, Lightning's quest for ever faster speed reflects Virilio's description of modern society, in which speed becomes one of the primary organizing principles for technological and political development. Now, as Virilio puts it, the city is but a stopover for habitual circulation. Now, in other words, cities are not built to facilitate human comfort and happiness. Now, they're built to facilitate the ever faster movement of people and goods. And this fixation on speed and efficiency often comes at the expense of the people these forces are ostensibly trying to serve.
The town got bypassed just to save 10 minutes of driving.
You know, indeed, the car-induced need for speed caused the plight of Radiator Springs in the first place, leaving Porsche to reflect on simpler times.
Back then, cars came across the country a whole different way.
How do you mean?
Cars didn't drive on it to make great time. They drove on it to have a great time.
If Lightning embodies how a culture obsessed with cars empowers a fast, elite few, well, Radiator Springs demonstrates how the relentless pursuit of speed devastates entire communities. And this contrast functions as a reckoning with car culture itself. Lightning, whose livelihood is predicated on achieving the highest speed, is forced to consider if there's more to life than just going fast and winning trophies. And this is where the movie is a little bit confusing because, you know, after we see all of these problems that were caused by cars and car culture, the movie is basically like, yeah, but you know what could fix it? More cars. Just helpful cars that care about their friends, you know, good cars. Sort of like how, you know, to fix the prison industrial complex? Female prison guards, you know? That sort of logic. That won't make it in the video. We're not gonna do prison reform. We're not gonna talk about abolishing prisons on this channel. And some of that might sound like, you know, mosquitoes curing malaria or Exxon leading the charge against fossil fuels. Because for all of Carr's astute criticism of car culture, its premise is still predicated on the celebration of that very culture. You know, it's like if there was a movie about sentient guns advocating that we should solve our problems with peaceful words rather than bullets. You know, it's just not what they were designed to do. So what does this internal contradiction tell us about what Cars is then really saying? And can understanding that reveal something to us about our own car-infested world? Okay, so when I was rewatching the movie recently, there's one moment that really stuck out to me.
Man, I just don't see any on-ramp anywhere.
Minnie, I know exactly where we are.
These average American cars are taking a fun family road trip. They're in separate vehicles. And it kind of made me think of how living someplace like Los Angeles, even when you decide to hang out with friends, you'll often end up all driving separately. So you spend like 20, 30 minutes in the car alone, then you gotta find parking, and you're all parked in different places. You walk to the place that you're going, inevitably you walk back to your car alone. You know, it's not as fun as life should be. And these minivans in the movie seem to really crystallize the paradox that is at the heart of the film. Because there's a fundamental weirdness about a film that's about humanoid cars and the car world, then trying to teach us, its viewers, that are humans, about the power of community. Because its world is entirely built around car culture, which, as we've learned, is directly responsible for atomizing human communities. So Lightning isn't being problematic when he says,
I work solo mio.
He's just being a good car. Of course, Lightning's entire character arc seems ostensibly to be about him learning the importance of teamwork and trust, or as my grandfather would call them, the 2 T's. But he doesn't humbly call upon his friends for help. They simply just show up at the race unprompted, which honestly, that kind of rips. I wish I had friends that just showed up to help me even if I didn't ask. And once there, they mostly just hang out and, watch him, or offer encouraging but not really strategic advice.
If you can drive as good as you can fix a road, then you can win this race with your eyes shut.
Also, the only car that materially helps Lightning is Guido, who's also the only character to be basically non-verbal, a mostly insular character. Rather than it requiring a communitarian effort to change Lightning's wheels, all we needed was one super Italian forklift who's geared entirely towards maximizing efficiency. Italians, if you're watching, would you consider a big part of your culture to be efficiency? I'm not asking with any motive. I'm just really curious if you think to yourself, main thing about us as Italians is efficiency. To be clear, I think you're great, and there's a lot of great stuff you do. Speed and individual skill are still, for the most part, the dominant organizing ethos. And this is fitting because Guido, like all cars, isn't actually a charming Italian, because cars aren't hippies or muscle men or good-natured hillbillies. They're commodities. They're just economic goods that can be bought and sold on a free market and are mostly valued for their speed. According to Gores, they're also the first form of transportation to really facilitate a consumer relationship with their owner, unlike riding a horse or a bicycle. And unlike my hypothetical horse/best friend Butterscotch, my car requires a constant supply of fuel that I have to buy, as well as specialists for all types of repairs and upkeep. But in the film, this collective dependence on the commercial car industry is reframed as benevolent. It's more like a sharing economy grounded in friendship than one rooted in profit.
Our first real customer in years.
Just cars helping other cars to be better cars. This makes me think of philosopher Byung-Chul Han. Now, he argues in his book Psychopolitics that humans today exist largely to mediate between the relations of capital. He says this makes us the sexual organs of capitalism. Let me know if you think you know which of those organs we are and what we do with them. Now, the result of all this is that we exist only incidentally to serve as a point of exchange between commodities. He writes that we no longer work to satisfy our own needs. Instead, we work for capital, though we perceive its needs to be our needs. The idea here is that in modern culture, we end up sacrificing parts of our own life. Maybe you stay up late working one night for your job and you think that you're doing it for you, but you're really doing it for your company and its financial needs, or something like that. I'm sure some of you can relate. Now, Cars cuts out the middleman, showing a world of commodities without humans. We're no longer required to mediate interactions between capital because sentient commodities like cars and tow trucks just do it for themselves. And this makes it extra fitting that Lightning saves the town by generating new clients and sale opportunities for the locals.
Hi, Lightning McQueen told me this was the best place in the world to get tires. How about setting me and my friends up with 3 or 4 sets each?
And so the film's initial critique of automobile-induced selfishness is then turned on its head. Lightning learns that he's more than a commodity who exists to go fast, and he embraces his own form of humanity. However, that humanity is still primarily expressed via his ability to facilitate commerce. Now, his attitude may change, he may gain some emotional intelligence, but he's unable to transcend his fundamental carness. Consider how he remains loyal to his off-brand sponsors.
These Rusty's guys over there gave me my big break. I'm gonna stick with them.
His apparent act of kindness is ultimately just in service of selling more automobile hemorrhoid cream. The alienating consumer culture that cars demand is reframed as not only natural, but even benevolent, so long as you have a few heroic cars zooming around the streets, facilitating the speedy flow of commerce. And of course, there's a few cops because you always gotta have cops. And everyone seems really on board with this revision. Lightning's sacrifice of speed for compassion makes everyone forget that the point of a car race is to win. And the borderline absurdity of the film's abrupt U-turn only seems to be fully appreciated by the villain, Chick. Now, Chick is punished for the kind of selfishness that has, up until 3 minutes ago, been what wins race cars their groupies and their sponsorship deals.
Hey, Rook, first one to California gets Dynaco all to himself.
In this moment, Chick is painted as a selfish jerk who just got what was coming to him, but honestly, his confusion seems valid because he was just operating by the logic of a race car. You know, he was trying to achieve maximum speed and win the race. Lightning and his crew, in contrast, reject car culture's atomization and total fixation on speed, and in doing so, the film kind of suggests that these are bugs rather than fixtures of car culture. But even the film's sweetest moments reveal that a world structured for cars is always going to be one in which we're essentially on our own, beating our way to the next destination.
Last one to Flo's buys?
I don't know. Why don't we just take a drive?
Nah.
While Cars is known for its depiction of cars behaving like humans, it's worth looking through the rear view mirror. Because what if rather than being a film about cars that get in touch with their humanity, it's really about humans getting in touch with the fact that they're slowly becoming cars. Because the projection of human virtues onto cars ultimately matters less than the projection of carness onto our humanity. It's a literalization of the fact that cars facilitate an existence where our main preoccupations are traveling at speed and then mediating exchanges of capital. And the film's celebration of this phenomenon as cute or charming kind of feels a little bit perverse. Because when we retreat into and even start to merge with our cars, our world changes, and generally for the worse. Gore's friend once commented after navigating Parisian traffic in 1977, "You'll never have socialism with that kind of people." And when he says socialism here, I think he basically just means that traffic and cars create barriers that prevent people from working together towards some sort of collective good. As when we tie our freedom to cars, it makes that freedom fundamentally individualistic. And that the social atomization they engender creates an even more individualistic and market-based view of politics that isn't really conducive to any of the communal caring values that the film seems to be paying lip service to. And we see that today, with all the fervor about the idea of self-driving cars, it's like the real world is answering the question posed by cars. You know, what if you can render the person behind the steering wheel superfluous or even non-existent? When the human disappears from the car, its purpose entirely detached from human needs, all that's left is
speed. I am speed.
Too bad there is no alternative, because if you've done your research, you know that trains are really, really mean. Okay guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. In the meantime, please remember that Show Me the Meaning, our movie podcast, streams right here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And after the fact, you can check it out either on our live tab as a VOD, or you can listen to it on any of the major podcast platforms. In the meantime, you know, slow down a little bit, don't go too fast, and I'll see you next time.